The first time I saw him, I thought he was carved out of marble, untouchable, merciless. A man who could slice you open with nothing but his eyes and walk away without a second thought. The second time I saw him, he made me wish I'd never agreed to that stupid bet. It started in the loud chaos of a college party. The kind where everyone drinks too much, laughs too loudly, and pretends they're not terrified of tomorrow. I was just another reckless med student with too much bravado and not nearly enough common sense. Someone, probably my so-called best friend, Eric, pointed out the surgeon who had recently joined the teaching hospital. "Dr. Chase Morgan," Eric whispered, smirking. "He's gorgeous, but rumor is he's colder than Alaska in January. I dare you to make him fall for you." And like an idiot, I said yes. First, it was a game. A reckless, arrogant game where I told myself I could flirt with him, tease him, make him blush, or at least make him notice me. I thought it would be easy. After all, I had charm, wit, and a smile people usually melted for. But Chase wasn't like other people. The first time I walked into his operating theater as an observer, he didn't even look at me. Not once. His entire focus was on the patient, on the scalpel, on the rhythm of a beating heart he literally held in his hands. He wasn't just good. He was terrifyingly brilliant. And when he finally did glance my way, it was like staring into the ocean during a storm, dark, endless, and ready to drown me. I should have stopped then. I should have admitted the bet was impossible. But pride is a dangerous thing, and my pride was louder than reason. So I kept trying. The coffee accidentally left on his desk. The jokes I slipped into hallway conversations. The way I lingered a little too long after rounds, hoping for a flicker of attention. He never gave me anything more than clipped nods or raised eyebrows. Cold, distant, untouchable. But something about him kept pulling me closer, like gravity I couldn't fight. Chase Morgan was 34, a prodigy who had made headlines for a groundbreaking cardiac procedure at just 29. He was the kind of man everyone admired from afar, but no one dared get close to. Too sharp, too controlled, too perfect. And beneath all that perfection, rumors swirled about why he never dated, why he never smiled, why he seemed to live only for the hospital. I wanted to crack him open, to see what was hidden underneath. At first, I told myself it was still the bet. But somewhere between the long nights in the hospital, the stolen glimpses when he thought no one was watching, and the rare moments when his voice softened unexpectedly, I stopped caring about winning. I just wanted him, and that terrified me. The night everything began to shift was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with possibility. I was on call, bleary-eyed and half-dead, when I spotted him sitting alone in the break room. He wasn't in scrubs this time, but in a crisp shirt with the top button undone. His dark hair slightly messy, like maybe the weight of the world had finally pushed him down for a moment. I almost walked past. Almost. Instead, I pushed the door open and said something stupid. "If you keep working this hard, you're going to end up being your own patient." To my shock, he actually chuckled. Not a full laugh, God, no, but a sound that cracked something inside me. "You think so?" he said, glancing up at me with those impossible eyes. And for the first time, I saw him not as a surgeon, not as the impossible man I was supposed to conquer, but as someone unbearably human. Tired. Alone. I sat across from him, and before I knew it, we were talking. Not much, nothing dramatic, nothing earth-shattering. But it was real. His voice was quieter than I expected, careful, as though every word was measured. And when I left the room, my chest ached in a way that had nothing to do with the bet. That was when the lines began to blur. Every touch felt charged. Every word carried weight. The brush of his hand against mine when we passed instruments. The way his gaze lingered for a second too long. The nights when our shifts overlapped and silence between us wasn't uncomfortable but electric. I started forgetting this was supposed to be a game. But guilt doesn't just vanish. It grows. Every time I looked at him, every time I felt myself wanting more, I remembered why it had started. I remembered the smirk on Eric's face when he dared me, and I hated myself for it, because Chase deserved better than to be someone's joke. And yet, I couldn't stop falling. By the time I realized I was in too deep, it was too late. I was already drowning in him, his steadiness, his brilliance, the rare glimpses of warmth he tried so hard to hide. I'd started the bet thinking I could win him. Now I just prayed he'd never find out the truth. I should have walked away. Every rational voice in my head screamed at me to stop before I crossed a line I couldn't return from. But desire doesn't care about reason, and my heart had already chosen sides. The more I saw Chase, the harder it became to pretend this was casual. There was nothing casual about the way my chest tightened whenever he brushed past me in the hallway, or the way his silence lingered long after he left a room. He wasn't someone you flirted with and forgot. He was someone you got lost in, dangerously, irreversibly lost. And I was already gone. The real turning point came on a rainy Friday night. I'd been stuck with endless chart reviews, my brain fried, when I realized I'd left my jacket in the surgical lounge. By the time I went back for it, most of the hospital had quieted. The storm outside rattled against the windows, thunder low and restless, and the hallways felt like they belonged to ghosts. When I pushed open the lounge door, Chase was there. Alone again. He sat by the window, staring out into the rain as though the storm had stolen his thoughts. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and for once he didn't look untouchable. He looked breakable. I froze. Maybe I should have walked out, but something about the slump of his shoulders pinned me to the spot. He turned, noticed me, and for a second something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe even relief, before he masked it with his usual composure. "You're still here?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a half-smile. "Can't seem to escape this place." "Join the club," he murmured, turning back to the rain. I hesitated, then crossed the room and sat down across from him. Silence stretched, thick but not uncomfortable. My heart hammered like I was on trial. Finally, I asked, "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life?" His jaw tightened. "Every day. And never." The honesty in his voice cut through me. I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the storm, his profile sharp against the window's glow. "This job takes everything from you," he said at last. "Your time, your peace, your humanity. Sometimes you give, and in the end, there's nothing left for yourself. But then one patient lives who shouldn't have. One heart beats when it was supposed to stop, and suddenly it feels worth it. For a moment." His voice cracked barely, but enough. I swallowed, my throat tight. I wanted to reach across the table, to touch his hand, to tell him he wasn't as alone as he thought. But I couldn't. Instead, I whispered, "You're more human than you think." For the briefest second, his eyes found mine. And in that second, something shifted. From that night on, we weren't the same. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand confessions, no sweeping gestures. Just small changes. The way he started acknowledging me with more than a nod. The way his gaze softened, just slightly, when I entered a room. The way he once, God help, smiled. It was like chasing sunlight through clouds. Rare, fleeting, but blinding when it broke through. And I was addicted. The first time he touched Miral, I touched might wasn't planned. We were scrubbing out after a grueling surgery that had stretched for hours. My arms ached, my eyes burned, and I was ready to collapse. But Chase looked worse. His shoulders sagged, his skin pale, exhaustion carved deep into him. I muttered, "You're going to kill yourself one day, working like this." And before I could move away, his hand brushed mine. Not by accident. His fingers lingered, warm against my damp skin. A quiet acknowledgement of something unspoken. It was nothing. It was everything. My breath caught, and I looked up at him. His expression didn't change, but his eyes, God, his eyes held me captive. Neither of us spoke. The moment passed, and he pulled away. But I carried that touch with me like a brand, burning long after. I kept telling myself I'd confess, that I'd tell him about the bet before it went any further. Every time I opened my mouth, though, fear strangled me. What if he looked at me with disgust? What if I lost him before I even had him? So I stayed silent, cowardly, selfishly silent. And the deeper I fell, the heavier the secret became. The cracks showed one night when we were on call together. It was late, too late, and we were both running on fumes. I made some dumb joke about how he probably didn't even own a bed, since he seemed married to the hospital. To my shock, his lips twitched. But then he said quietly, "You don't know what you're talking about." Something in his tone froze me. "Then tell me," I said softer. For a long moment, I thought he'd shut me out. But then, in a voice rawer than I'd ever heard, he said, "The last time I let someone close, it nearly destroyed me. So forgive me if I don't laugh at the idea of letting it happen again." My chest tightened like someone had reached in and squeezed. I wanted to tell him everything then, that I wasn't playing anymore, that he meant more to me than he could imagine. But instead, I just whispered, "I wouldn't hurt you." His eyes searched mine, as though daring me to prove it. And then he walked away. That night, lying in the on-call room, I stared at the ceiling and felt the walls closing in. I couldn't keep this up. He deserved the truth. But every time I pictured his face when he found out, I broke a little more. The breaking point came unexpectedly. It always does. Eric, the genius who had started this entire mess, cornered me at a bar one weekend. "So?" he asked with a smirk. "Did you win the bet yet? Has the Ice King fallen to your charm?" Something inside me snapped. "It's not a game," I spat, shoving past him. But Chase, who had come in quietly behind me, looking for Maherd. The world stopped. I turned, horror flooding me as I saw him standing there, expression unreadable, eyes burning with betrayal. "Chase," I choked, stepping toward him. "It's not what you think." His voice was like glass shattering. Don't lie to me." The bar noise faded to nothing. My chest caved in. "Please let me explain." But he was already gone. The days that followed were hell. He shut me out, completellino glances. No words. Nothing. Just a wall of silence colder than anything I'd ever imagined. And I deserved it. God, I deserved it. But that didn't make it hurt any less. Every night I replayed it, wishing I'd confessed earlier, wishing I'd chosen honesty over pride. But wishes don't fix broken trust. And yet I couldn't give up. Not on him. Not on us. So I tried. I left him notes he never answered. Waited outside the hospital just to see him walk by. Begged for even a single word. Nothing. Until one night, when desperation finally cracked me open. I found him in the surgical wing, long after everyone else had left. He was sitting alone again, like the night it had all started. But this time there was no softness in him. Just steel. "Chase," I whispered, my voice breaking. He looked up. His eyes were dead. "What do you want?" The finality in his tone gutted me. But I forced myself closer. "I want you to know the truth. The whole truth. No lies this time." His jaw tightened, but he didn't move. I poured it out then. Everything. The bet, my arrogance, how it had started as a stupid game. And how it had stopped being one the moment I saw him smile. "I fell for you," I said, tears stinging. "I didn't mean to. God, I swear I didn't. But I did. And I can't undo it. I don't care about the bet, I don't care about winning. Care about you. Just you." Silence. He stared at me like I was a stranger. My heart pounded, waiting for him to tear me apart. Finally, he whispered, "Do you have any idea what you've done?" My throat closed. "Yes, I broke the one thing I swore I wouldn't. Your trust." His gaze flickered then, a shadow of pain cracking through the mask. But he stood cold and resolute. "You should leave." And just like that, he walked away again. The days after that were a blur of shame and desperation. I went through the motions at the hospital, but nothing felt real anymore. Without him, the sterile white walls closed in like a cage. Every empty hallway whispered his absence. Every operating room felt colder without his quiet authority. I thought I'd known loneliness before, but this was something else entirely. This was drowning in plain sight, gasping for air no one could give me. Chase avoided me with a precision only he was capable of. He timed his shifts to miss mine, changed his routes through the hospital, made sure we never crossed paths. And when we did, by sheer accident, His eyes slid right through me as though I didn't exist. That was worse than anger. Worse than shouting. It was annihilation. Eric tried to laugh it off when he realized the fallout. Come on, man, it was just a joke. You're seriously letting him get under your skin this much? I nearly hit him. Instead, I said through clenched teeth, you don't get it. It wasn't a joke to me. Not anymore. Eric rolled his eyes, muttering something about me being dramatic. But I didn't care. All I could think about was the way Chase had looked at me, that night betrayal carved into his features. Pain hidden beneath fury. And I'd caused it. Weeks dragged by, heavy and endless. I told myself to let him go, to stop chasing a man who clearly didn't want me anymore. But I couldn't. My heart refused to obey. One evening, after another grueling day, I found myself outside his office door. I don't even remember walking there. My knuckles hovered above the wood, trembling. I knocked. No answer. Something inside me cracked, and before I could stop myself, I pushed the door open. He was there, of course, papers scattered across his desk. His glasses perched low on his nose. He didn't look up. Get out, he said flatly. I stepped inside anyway. No, that made him pause. Slowly, he raised his gaze, and the ice in his eyes nearly froze me where I stood. I said, get out. I can't, I whispered. Not until you hear me. His jaw tightened, but he leaned back, folding his arms. Fine. Say whatever you need to say. Then leave. I swallowed hard, every nerve in my body on fire. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I need you to understand it stopped being a game a long time ago. I fell for you, Chase. For real. And I don't care if you never forgive me. I had to tell you. His expression didn't change. If anything, it grew colder. You think words fix this? He asked, his voice sharp. You think a confession erases the fact that you used me as some cheap bet? No, I said quickly, tears burning my eyes. I don't. Nothing erases it. My voice broke. I can't lose you without at least telling you the truth. For a moment, silence stretched, unbearable. Then he stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This conversation is over, he said, moving past me. I reached out instinctively, grabbing his sleeve. Please. He froze. Slowly, he turned his head, and the look he gave me was lethal. Don't touch me. My hand fell away, and then he was gone again, leaving me in the ruins of everything I'd destroyed. I hit rock bottom after that. My grades slipped. I stopped sleeping. The hospital, once the place I'd dreamed of, became a battlefield where every corner reminded me of what I'd lost. But the worst part wasn't my pain. It was knowing I'd hurt him, this man who had already been wounded once before, who had built walls around himself to survive, only for me to break them down with lies. How could I forgive myself for that? Then, fate intervened. It was a Saturday night, the hospital buzzing with emergency cases from a highway accident. I was assisting in the ER, hands shaking from adrenaline, when I heard his voice. Where's the trauma bay? Chase barked, striding in like a storm. My heart lurched. For hours, we worked side by side intubating, suturing, stabilizing patients who'd been mangled by metal and glass. He didn't acknowledge me once, but I couldn't stop watching him, couldn't stop feeling the magnetic pull even through the chaos. At one point, as we rushed a patient towards surgery, his hand brushed mine on the gurney. Just a flicker of contact, but it sent a jolt through me. He pulled away instantly, jaw tight, but something in his eyes wavered. It gave me the smallest spark of hope. After the last patient was wheeled into recovery, I found him in the scrub room washing blood from his hands. His shoulders slumped, exhaustion evident. For once, he didn't notice me right away. I stood in the doorway, heart pounding. Then I said softly, "You were incredible tonight." He froze. Slowly, he turned, his gaze heavy. "Don't. I mean it," I said, stepping closer. "You saved lives. You always do. And God, I wish you could see yourself the way I see you." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain. Longing. But then it hardened again. You don't get to say things like that, he whispered. Not after what you did. My throat closed. You're right. I don't. But I can't stop feeling it. I can't stop loving you. The words hung in the air, raw and undeniable. His face went still, unreadable. For a heartbeat, I thought he might break, that he might reach for me, pull me into the arms I ached for. Instead, he turned away. Leave. The knife twisted deeper. But as I walked out, I caught the slightest tremor in his hands, the tiniest crack in his voice. And I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. I became relentless after that. Not in a reckless way, but in small, quiet persistence. I brought him coffee, even when he threw it away. I stayed late to cover shifts, just to be near him. I left notes, not apologies anymore, but words of gratitude, encouragement, admiration. First, he ignored them. But one morning, I noticed one of my notes still on his desk, unfolded. It was progress. The real breakthrough came weeks later. I was leaving the hospital after a long shift when I saw him standing outside, staring at the night sky. His posture was rigid, but his face was unguarded in the glow of the street lamp. I hesitated, then walked over. He didn't turn, didn't push me away. He just said quietly, "Why are you still trying?" The question broke something in me. "Because you're worth it," I whispered. "Even if you never forgive me, even if you never look at me the same way again, you're worth everything." Finally, he turned. His eyes searched mine, raw and conflicted. "You think love is enough?" he asked bitterly. "No," I said honestly, "but it's all I have, and I'm giving it to you, no matter what you do with it." Silence stretched. His jaw worked, his chest rising and falling unevenly. And then, for the first time in months, his mask slipped. His voice cracked. "You broke me. Tears blurred my vision. Then let me spend the rest of my life putting you back together." For a long moment, he just stared at me, torn between anger and longing. Then he stepped back, shaking his head. "I can't do this," he whispered. "Not now." And he walked away again. But this time, he didn't tell me to stop trying. That night, lying awake, I clung to that tiny thread of hope. He wasn't ready. He might never be ready. But somewhere deep down, I knew he hadn't let me go completely. And neither had I. Hope is a fragile thing. It flickers, it falters, but sometimes, against all odds, it refuses to die. That's what I clung to in the weeks that followed, those cracks in his armor. The moments when his silence wasn't as sharp, when his eyes lingered a fraction too long. Chase wasn't ready to forgive me. I knew that. But maybe forgiveness wasn't a single moment. Maybe it was 1,000 tiny steps, each one painful and hesitant. I just had to be patient. The breakthrough came on a night neither of us expected. A massive storm had knocked out power across half the city, and the hospital ran on generators. The ER overflowed with patients injured from accidents, falls, panic attacks. I worked until my body felt like it was made of stone, my scrubs soaked through with sweat and rain. When things finally slowed, I staggered into the stairwell, desperate for air. That's when I found him. Chase sat on the steps, head in his hands, the weight of the night pressing down on him. He looked up as I entered, and for once he didn't put the mask back on. His eyes were raw, filled with exhaustion and something deeper, fear. Without thinking, I sat beside him. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The storm howled outside, rain lashing against the windows. Then, softly, he said, "I lost a patient tonight." My chest tightened. "I'm sorry." His jaw clenched. "I did everything right. Every protocol. Every step. And still." His voice broke. "I hate this part. The helplessness. The failure." I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that he saved more lives than anyone could count. But I knew those words would bounce off him like rain on glass. So instead, I said, "You don't have to carry it alone." His eyes flickered to me, torn, vulnerable. "And what? Hand it to you? After everything?" The sting of his words hit deep, but I held his gaze. "If you'll let me. If not now, then one day." Silence. Then slowly he exhaled. His shoulders sagged, the fight leaving him for once. And though he didn't say yes, he didn't say no either. It was enough. From that night, something shifted between us. Subtle, cautious, but real. He stopped avoiding me. He started acknowledging me again, if only with brief nods, a clipped "good morning." A steadying glance during a chaotic surgery. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door cracked open, and I was determined to prove myself worthy of stepping through. Proving it wasn't easy. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I had to show him over and over that I was serious, that my feelings were real, that I wasn't going anywhere. So I showed up. Every shift, every late night, every grueling surgery. I worked harder than I ever had in my life, not to impress him, but to stand beside him. I stopped chasing him with apologies and grand gestures. Instead, I listened. I supported. I respected his silences. And slowly, he began to meet me halfway. The moment I knew we were finding our way back came one quiet morning in the hospital cafeteria. I was hunched over bad coffee, reviewing charts, when a tray slid onto the table across from me. I looked up, startled. It was Chase. He didn't say anything, just sipped his coffee, eyes scanning the room. But the fact that he chose to sit with me in public was louder than any words. My chest ached with quiet joy. Weeks later, it happened. The moment I dreamed of, dreaded, prayed for. We were leaving after a long shift, the parking lot nearly empty, the night cool and clear. I walked him to his car, as I sometimes did, the silence between us comfortable now. As he unlocked his door, he paused. His hand lingered on the handle. Then he turned to me. His eyes held mine, steady, unflinching. "Why didn't you give up?" The question was soft, but it carried the weight of everything between us. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Because you're worth it. Because even when you hated me, I couldn't stop loving you. Because I'd rather spend the rest of my life proving I'm not the same selfish idiot than walk away and wonder what could have been." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, slowly, his expression softened. And before I could react, his hand lifted hesitant, trembling, and brushed my cheek. The touch undid me. My breath caught, tears burning my eyes. "Chase," I whispered, barely daring to believe it. His voice was quiet, rough with emotion. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't," I swore. And then, finally, after months of pain and longing, he kissed me. It wasn't a dramatic kiss, not at first. It was tentative, testing, the meeting of two broken halves unsure if they could fit together. But as his lips pressed against mine, something inside both of us cracked open. I poured everything into that kiss, every apology, every confession, every ounce of love I'd held back. And when he kissed me back, harder this time, it felt like forgiveness, like rebirth. When we pulled apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "This doesn't erase the past," he murmured. "I know," I said. "But maybe it's the start of something better." His lips twitched, ghost of a smile. Maybe. The weeks that followed were fragile but beautiful. We learned each other all over again, carefully, slowly. We talked about everything. About his past heartbreak, about my fear of failure, about the mistakes that nearly destroyed us. It wasn't easy. Some nights ended in arguments, in slammed doors, in long silences. But each time we came back to each other. Each time we chose to stay. And with every choice, the cracks between us healed a little more. One evening, months later, I found him on the hospital rooftop, staring at the city lights. I slipped beside him and he didn't flinch. "I used to think I'd end up alone," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because it was easier than risking this," he admitted. "Than risking being hurt again." I slipped my hand into his, our fingers intertwining. "And now," he looked at me then, really looked, his blue eyes softer than I'd ever seen. "Now I think maybe some risks are worth it." My chest ached with love so fierce it terrified me. "Then let me spend the rest of my life proving you're right," I whispered. He squeezed my hand, and in that moment, I knew we were no longer two people circling each other through walls of fear and regret. We were something real, something worth fighting for. Months turned into a year. We kept our relationship private at first, cautious of the whispers that already followed us in the hospital halls. But slowly we stopped hiding. And though there were raised eyebrows, murmured judgments, even outright hostility from some, we faced it together, side by side, because we'd already survived the hardest part, surviving ourselves. On the anniversary of that first kiss, he surprised me. We were walking home from the hospital, hand in hand, when he suddenly stopped beneath the glow of a street lamp. He turned to me, eyes steady, vulnerable in a way that still stole my breath. "I used to think love made you weak," he said softly, "that it stripped you of your defenses, left you exposed. But with you, I feel stronger, better, alive." My throat closed with emotion. "Chase." He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "I don't need promises of forever," he said, voice trembling slightly. "Just this, just us. Will you stay with me? For as long as we have." Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, unable to speak. "Yes," I finally choked. "God, yes." He slipped the simple silver band onto my finger, his hands shaking. And then he kissed me, under the street lamp, under the watching stars, sealing a vow that didn't need words. We weren't perfect. We never would be. But love isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. About choosing each other again and again, even when it's hard. And as I held him that night, his heartbeat steady beneath my hand, I knew I'd found my forever. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.